So this is the session, dbaTools, PowerShell Toolkit for the DBA. And I'm Jack Corbett. And this is, I like to start with this every place, like the first day of college. If this is not the session you expected it to be, now is the time to go find the one you're supposed to be, that first day of classes in college, right? So again, the standard thing, please silence your cell phones. I'm pretty sure mine is silenced because I leave it silenced almost all the time. I like vibrate mode better than ringing. PASS has a lot to offer, right? We've got Summit is the big main event, but you have your local chapters, SQL Saturdays, virtual chapters, PASS Marathon, all the things that PASS has to offer, right? There's always opportunities to be learning. It doesn't have to be here at the Summit. It can be where you are. I'm sure there's a user group near you, and if there's not, maybe there's an opportunity for you to start one. Oops. So this is my About Me slide. I used to be a data platform MVP for 5 years. It was a great honor, but Microsoft chose not to renew me at one point, and I am the PASS regional mentor for the Northeast region. And I'm a senior consultant for a small remote DBA services company based out of New Hampshire called Straight Path Solutions. I've been doing SQL for 20 years. Started in a small manufacturing environment and still like working with the small groups. So, session evaluations. Please, for all of the sessions you attend, go in and take the 5 minutes to fill out the session evals. They're very important. They're very valuable to the speakers, especially if you have anything that didn't go well in the session, comments you can prove. If you're going to, give somebody a 1, please give a reason why you said that was a 1, right? Because that's how we improve our sessions as we move forward. So it did. I haven't done the one from a second session I went to yesterday, but I did the one for the first time. It really takes 5 minutes if you can remember your password to log in. So this is what we're going to talk about. There's not a lot of slides in this. So don't get concerned if I'm done my slides in 5 or 10 minutes. Because we want to, you don't want to just hear about it, you want to see some things, right? Yeah. So we're going to talk, quick explanation of what DBA tools are. I mean, obviously, how many people are currently using or have experimented with DBA tools? Right, good, most of the room, right? It's a great toolkit, right? We're going to talk about, real quick, they're just a couple of minutes each slide, what's required to be able to use DBA tools, why you should use them, in my opinion, and how to use it, and some of my favorite commandlets. They may not be the ones you like, but they're my favorite ones, some of my favorites. And then we're just going to spend the time in demos, right? Because again, I know I like demos, so as a thing. So what is it? It's a free and open source PowerShell module for SQL Server DBAs. Chrissy Lemaire started it, and I apologize if I didn't say her name correctly, her last name. And it's maintained by the SQL Server and PowerShell communities and extended. And it's out on GitHub. You can fork it. You can make changes to it. The documentation is great on the dbaTools.io website. And I don't know exactly how many commandlets there are, but I know there's 500 plus. According to Rob, there's 564 commandlets right now. So we have 75 minutes. You're not going to see very many of those 564 commandlets. And I know Rob did a pre-con. I think I heard you did like 50? Yeah, on a full-day pre-con. So this is something that you're getting a bite-sized taste of what it is and how it can help you when you go back to your employment, back to your job. And you need to explore it yourself. I started giving this talk at my local user group back in January, and I've done a couple of SQL Saturdays since then. And I've added about 4 or 5 things that I'm like, oh, I like this command better now. I'm dropping that one out of my demo because I want to show this one because this one's cool, right? So I got a coworker, my boss is here, and almost every week I'm dropping into Teams. I'm saying, hey, here's my new cool DBA tools commandlet that we need to start using. So is tons of information out there. The website is great. The documentation is good. Take advantage of that. Why to use it? Number one, automation, right? Come in, run a script, done. Take the rest of the day to answer questions on Stack Overflow, SQL Server Central, whatever your preferred place is, right? That's what the BIML folks like to say. I used to like the shirts that the BIML guys gave out that said, my boss thought it was going to take me 40 hours and it took me 8 with BIML or something like that. This is similar to that. I love, it doesn't have to be installed on your SQL servers. Now, obviously, if you want to run them in jobs on your SQL server, it has to be installed on your SQL server. But as a consultant, we typically have a jump server that we come onto, and we install dbaTools on that, and then we can manage that entire environment from that jump server using dbaTools or SSMS. You can take multi-step processes, things you have to click through in SSMS or something else, and it's a one-line commandlet. That's pretty cool, right? And all you got to do is change the server name that you're pointing it out, or the list of servers. That's the other thing that's great about it is when I want to run something against 50 servers, I just supply an array or read a file using get content of the 50 servers I want to run that commandlet against. And dbaTools and PowerShell takes care of that for me, iterating over that and running it on all those servers, right? Awesome, right? So registered servers, central management servers, yeah, you can run against a bunch of servers, but boy, to me, it's a lot nicer than having to connect to each one of them. Wait for how many people use central management servers or registered servers and run multi-server queries, and you wait 5 minutes for you to get the connection to all of those servers. I don't have to deal with that with dbaTools. PowerShell expertise is optional for using these tools. You do not have to be a PowerShell guru. I am not a PowerShell developer. I've written some PowerShell, and PowerShell developers would be like, wow, that is some ugly stuff. But the point being that this makes it much easier. I don't have to make it as ugly because it's one line. And again, you can leverage this. So we're not going to see today, you're not going to see some big fancy script that does 19 different things. We're going to show basically single commandlets at a time. But you can obviously build on top of this. Right? One of the first ways I used dbaTools was to build a solution where we're going to see a little piece of this, if we have time, for a client that has lots of databases. They either want them in an AG or in log shipping. So I built a process for them where they can drop a database name in a table and say, I want this to be log shipped to this server, or I want this to be added to this AG, and I've got a job that runs that reads that table and says, oh, add this to an AG, add this to this, and it's leveraging PowerShell and dbaTools, right? I think that's really cool. And not only that, they can change the status of that database in that table and say, I want to remove this from the availability group, and it'll remove it. I want to add it to, I don't just want to remove it, I want to change it from availability group to log shipping, and this script will go through, read that table, and take it out of the availability group and initialize log shipping automatically, right? That's pretty cool. And there's some code written for that, but without dbaTools, it would be a lot more code, right? It only requires PowerShell 3 or later, because as it says on the dbaTools website, Microsoft allowed them to package SMO with dbaTools, so you don't have to install anything else. It integrates with other open source free SQL tools. And it's 500 plus commands. We said 564 commands and growing and being maintained by people like Rob, by people in the community who want to contribute. And please, if you find any issues, I already told somebody in the thing, if you're having any issues with commands, please, it's on GitHub. They take bug requests. They take feature requests there. Please, do that. And they respond very quickly. I found a bug, and I got a response in like 15 minutes. From GitHub, so it's cool. So, and it does. It integrates, when I say integrates, so how many people use like Ola Hallegren's maintenance solution, right? So several of the commands, especially around maintenance, backup, and restore, will, if you're using Ola Hallengren, you can say, hey, use the standard Ola Hallengren path to get my backups, to find my backups, right? And it will do those kind of things for you. So it's really cool. And again, automation, right? So I got to ask this because one of my coworkers hates when people ask this question in sessions, so I got to ask it. So how many people here are DBAs? That's your primary job role. So almost everybody, which is what I would expect in a session for DBAs. But how many people are like PowerShell developers or developers? Any of those? Yeah. So, but yeah. So, if you've got something you want to add, if there's functionality that's not there, again, I already said it, it's on GitHub. Fork it, make your changes, submit them, they get reviewed, and you can have it added. Like I said, I'm not a PowerShell developer. I'm not planning on adding anything to do it, but it's great. How to use it. So you need to install it, obviously, and the easiest way to do that is if you're on, I don't even remember what PowerShell version it is, but on modern operating systems, you can just install module dbaTools, and it will go out to the gallery and install that. There's a couple of prompts you have to answer. And again, the installation instructions on dbaTools.io are great. If you're on an older operating system, you might, in order to use install module, you have to go out and install WMF Framework 5.1. Well, to use install module. But you don't have to do that. That's one of the great things about PowerShell. You can just download the zip file, and there's instructions on how to do that, and put it in your PowerShell path, and it will run. And that's actually how we're going to do the install, because I wasn't sure whether or not internet was going to be good enough here to do install module. Install module definitely is the preferred method, because it puts it in the right place, it unlocks everything, you know it's going to work if you use install module. So if something doesn't work, it's because the files are locked when I do my demo here, because I want to show you how to do that. My suggested starting points, any of the get DBA commands, right? Because that's like a select statement. You can't hurt, well, you shouldn't be able to hurt anything, because it should be a good enough select that it's not going to take down your server, right? Because it's using SMO. It's using a lot of what Management Studio is built on behind the scenes. So any of those get DBA commands are great just to get used to what they're doing. Get DBA login, get DBA database. And you can look at what they're using. And I do recommend most of the time piping that to format table, because the results are a little easier to read. I like that. I don't know if everybody else does. Some of my favorites, copy DBA login. How many people have had issues where you've migrated to a new server, you're restoring from production down into a dev or test environment, and you leave the orphan logins behind? And what was the old way to fix that? SP rev login, thank you very much. And how you had to install 2 stored procedures in master and go through all that, run SP rev login, and it does everything. There's no filtering, none of that. And then you got to copy and paste the commands and run them over there, right? Hey, copy DBA login takes care of all of that for you in one line. Copy DBA login, it takes care of that. It brings the SIDs over, it brings the passwords over, everything. It's a fantastic command.
Can it do domain shift?
The question is, can it do domain shift? I do not know. I have not done that. So that's a great question. No, it doesn't. I just heard a no, it doesn't.
As most things, you're going to have to add some logic in to help you.
Right. Rob, who is one of the main guys on it. As with most things, his answer is, as with most things, you're going to have to do some logic to make it do that, right? Copy DBA agent job is another favorite, right, of mine. Because I haven't used start DBA migration to do a whole migration. But I have used copy DBA login and copy DB agent job to facilitate migrations. And the great thing for me about copy DB agent job is you can say disable on target or disable on source, because you don't, depending on what those jobs are doing, you don't want them running in 2 places, right? So you can automatically have them copied over disabled. And those are some, so those are kind of the starting points. And the other thing to remember, if you're not familiar with PowerShell, I believe all of the dbaTools commandlets, I know these do, support the what if parameter, right? And if you're not familiar with what if literally does what if. If I run this, what is it going to do? So like copy DBA login will tell you, okay, I'm going to move these logins, or I'm not going to move this one because it's a local login, it's one of the certificate logins. It tells you exactly what's going to happen before you do it. So if you're a paranoid DBA, like I am, I tend to do a lot of what if before I do it, even before I run it in dev, because I'm even paranoid in dev. So there's a lot of great commands there, a lot to do. It's a great toolkit. If you can't tell, I really, really like it. So now I believe, let me look. Oh yeah, so now we're into demos. We can get out of PowerPoint. I have to sit down so I won't fall off the stage by wandering. That's the thing. I like to walk, and I like to point at the screen, and I can't do that here. I have to use the pointer from the mouse. So again, there's a lot of things I already mentioned this. For Windows 10, Windows 2016 or newer, you can just do install module. You can install WMF 5.1. And a couple of places where I've done that before I can install WMF 5.1, there's a Windows update that has to be applied because somebody hasn't been keeping up with their patching. And then, so there might be a couple of reboots involved. That's one reason why the last time I did it at a client site, I didn't bother with that. I just did an offline, basically like an offline install. And you can download from GitHub or PS Gallery a couple of different ways on one machine and copy the zip file over and install it, we're going to see that right now. Oh, I did put that in my notes. That's good. All right, so let's get out of Management Studio, and I'm going to go full screen for this. So for the longest time, I did not understand profiles in PowerShell. And I'm not going to tell you I totally understand profiles now, but this is great. So this is $, if you're not familiar with PowerShell, is how you say it's a variable. And this is $env means it's an environment variable, so you're going to read it. So this is your PS module path. This is where if you drop things in these places, depending on where you put them and who it is, you'll be able to load them. So you can see when you're going to copy this in and do a manual install, you can run this and you can say, OK, if I put the dbaTools PowerShell modules in one of these directories, PowerShell will automatically load it into my profile, right? And you can just look at it. So if you do, where I'm going to put it is where install module, I've seen install module put it because I know that's where it is. And install module puts it in C program files, Windows PowerShell modules. Makes sense? I believe that makes it available to everyone on the machine. That's everyone. So you don't have to. So obviously the first one, C users, that's putting it in for my specific profile. So that's, but again, having looked to see where install module put it, I think if you're doing the offline install or doing that, this is probably the smart place to put it. That's my opinion. So I'm going to go now in here to where I already have it downloaded. And so it's just zipped here, and I'm just going to, and one of the things one of my coworkers taught me is you can actually look in here, and if this is blocked here, you can unblock it, and when you unzip, that unblocks everything that's in the zip file. So that I would recommend if you download the zip, check that and unblock it here so you don't have to deal with it on individual files. There is an unblock file commandlet in PowerShell as well, but hopefully we won't have to use that today. So let's just do extract all, and let's see, navigate to where I want it to go. And you can see I don't have it in here now because it's going to create a folder in here. And go. And you can see, 1,036 items in here. So there's quite a bit being downloaded. And honestly, I'm not sure off the top of my head. I just downloaded this week, so it should be the latest version. What? Yeah, OK. So it might be a new one. They update it regularly. One of the cool commands that is in there is update dbaTools. So if you want to do an update, you can run that. Oh, I made a mistake here. So it actually didn't create the DBA tool. See, every time, this is the first time I've done the demo without doing install module. So because I felt like that was kind of boring. So it needs to be in a dbaTools directory in here in order to work. So we're just going to redo the unzip because I'm not going to try to figure out which files I have to copy. And I'm going to browse again, blah, blah, blah. No, not PowerShell yet. All right, I'm already in modules, new folder. And it does need to be named dbaTools. And we will extract into here. So hopefully that's the one demo that didn't go as planned. There's always one, especially when you're doing an hour of demos. There's always at least one that has to go wrong, and hopefully that's the only one. Any questions while we're waiting for this to extract one more time? No question. Yes? Do they propagate again? So the question is, copy DBA login and copy a DBA agent job, do they propagate against an AG? Across an AG, I'm sorry, not against. So no, but you can use them to propagate your jobs and your logins across an AG, and that's actually one of the things we're going to do here. That's one of the reasons why they're among my favorite commands for keeping that in sync. All right, so now we do have dbaTools module here in Program Files, Windows, PowerShell modules. We've got the dbaTools thing here. We're in here. You know what? I honestly, because I've always done install module, I'm going to do this. I can't remember where I see it. View. All right, we won't bother. We'll just go into the demos and see if they work. So it should be here. I should be able to come in down here and do a get DBA database. Never type in demos. This is not one that I was what I was planning on doing. I haven't spelled database right. See, that's why you don't type in demos. But this is just me validating it's working, and I can't type SQL instance. That's why I like this, because my IntelliSense is not working here. And you like it. I like to name things so I can remember them, because you get nervous when you're in front of people, so you need to do that. So my SQL instance is my name, SQL01. So you can see there's not a lot of databases on there. There's just the system databases. I know it's hard to see. This is why I tend to pipe to get to format table, because they're objects, so they output like this. But you can see I got tempDB. And there's actually a lot more information being retrieved by get DBA database than what is just being displayed here, right? Because it's doing the SMO object here. So you can see all of those things there. So I do, that's the only typing I'm going to do for demos. Just for that, you know. I actually have them kind of scripted out. I need to re-upload the slides and the demo scripts up to the past site, because I did make some minor tweaks to them. But they are already up there. Most of this is here. So how many people have had issues with SPNs and Kerberos? So I didn't know this command existed for a long time. So I was using the Microsoft Kerberos tool for SQL Server all over the place to check Kerberos issues and stuff. So this is now one of my favorite commands, is test DBA SPN. There's a get DBA SPN as well. One thing I don't like about that one is that if there is no SPN, it doesn't give you any output. It doesn't tell you, oh, I didn't find any SPNs. But if you have SPNs, it's going to return them. So that's one of the things I don't like about that one. I keep standing up so people over here, if they're looking at me, they can see me occasionally behind the podium and the speaker. So this is going to go out. One of the things, so when I was presenting this at a SQL Saturday, somebody asked me, what do your security people think about this stuff? I said, well, I usually don't ask them. I install it and I use it because behind the scenes, it's just running SQL stuff that you would do in Management Studio, right? And this is one commandlet that I would say I might mention. If I was going to run this, I would probably mention it to my security team, because it does go out and query over WMI the ports to find SQL servers, to find any SQL servers that are on the computer name or names you specify here, right? So you need to make sure that's what I might talk to them about. But this is pretty cool. So I'm going to run this against my local machine, and you can see here's the output, and you can see these are the SPNs that would be needed for Kerberos to succeed, and it's telling me, oh, the SPN is missing for this specific, and this is the required SPN, and it also requires this SPN as well for the port, right?
Does it look for SPNs for reporting services and things like that as well?
So the question is, does it look for SPNs for reporting services and things like that as well? I do not know. I do not think it does. And Rob is shaking his head over here saying, no, it doesn't. So I'm glad he's in here so I can get better answers for you during the session. So it does not. Now, this is all well and good. Now I know what I need to do. It wouldn't be complete if I didn't have a set SPN command to be able to create the SPNs. Use the keyboard. So this is the set SPN command, right? What's the service account you need to run it under? And here's the SPN that needs to be created. So I can run that. Or if you're really feeling, frisky, you can pipe it. You can pipe the results of test DB SPN, checking where it is set to false, and then pipe that to set the results of that to set DBA SPN, and it creates all the SPNs all at one time. So this is, I don't usually do this in the demos. The reason why I don't is because this always gets me all the time in the ISC, and I know that some PowerShell people say you shouldn't use the ISC, but I'm not a PowerShell guy. So you got to make sure if you're selecting something that you use this button in the ISC and not this button. Because this button runs everything in the script, whether it's selected or highlighted or not. It's not like Management Studio where run just runs the selected thing. This burns me all the time. I'll highlight something and I'll do that. What? If you short keyboard shortcut, if it's highlighted, press F8 and you don't have to click the button. There you go. See, now I got another. Oh, there it is. It even tells me in a tooltip. You guys can't read the tooltip, but it even tells me in a tooltip. I told you I'm not a PowerShell guy. I'm a SQL guy. I don't know this stuff. So let's just run this. And you can see that didn't take very long. Runs it in there. It tells you what it did. So there's a couple of things. So it adds the SPN. It adds the constrained delegation. Obviously, just like anything else with SPNs, you need to be a domain admin to be able to set SPNs, right? Because you have to make changes to Active Directory, right? I happen to be demoing as a domain admin on my little domain on the three VMs I have on my laptop, right? Because I want things to work, not fail, right? So, but again, I can check it without being domain admin, and then I can send my domain admins, here's the PowerShell script to run to fix this on these servers, right? I don't have to wait for this. So I think this is pretty cool. I love this commandlet. I love these commandlets because SPNs and Kerberos are a pain. They don't have to be, but they tend to be because people just don't do it right. So that's good. Any questions now at this point? Pretty basic. Yes? I am not right. So the question is, do you need to run PowerShell ISE as administrator also? I don't believe I am running it as administrator here. Usually, I am, yes. I tend to run it as administrator just to be on the safe side. Because I want it to work. Go ahead, Rob.
The correct answer is you need to run on local host. With dbaTools, you must run as administrator if you're running on local host against things. Otherwise, no, absolutely.
Okay, so Rob answers so everybody can hear. If you're running on local host, you must run as administrator. If you're running on a remote machine, the commands against a remote machine, you do not need to run as administrator, which makes sense. When you think about it, it makes sense. And the other great thing about, like I said, about dbaTools in the opening, I don't have to install this on my SQL servers, and I don't have to do invoke, right? I don't have to have remoting enabled or anything either. Yes?
Will it identify the listener or the SPN for a listener as well?
So the question is, will it identify the SPN for an availability group listener? I believe it will, and we can check this later after we create an availability group. Will remind me when we do the availability group to go back and see if it'll find it. It should. So I wanted to make sure this got in, because sometimes when I run out of time before I get to the availability group stuff. So I want to make sure I show this before I get to that, because I think it's super, super cool. All right. So the next one I want to do, how many people, so Glenn Berry is here, and he did a session yesterday on his DMV's queries. How many people use Glenn Berry's DMV queries? Most of you, right? This is one of those, hey, community tools integration. So within dbaTools, there are a couple of commands that I'm using in here. So there is invoke DBA diagnostic query. And so I'm not showing you all of the parameters that you can use for any of these commands, right? You need to look at the documentation. There's a ton of them for almost all of them, including this one. But I like using it this way. So I can say invoke DBA diagnostic query on this server. And again, all of these commands you can pretty much run against an array of servers, array of SQL instances. It doesn't have to be one at a time, right? And I'm using this parameter, use selection helper. So that's going to pop up a grid view, and I'm going to get to pick the queries that I want to run from Glenn's scripts. And the other thing that's great is I don't have to have installed Glenn's scripts anywhere. They're here already. And then you can, one of the parameters for this command also does export it to a file, but I didn't notice that. I found this commandlet instead, export DBA diagnostic query, which I did a little reading, and it's a little more powerful than just exporting to a file. So you can then pipe that to send it to CSV files. By default, it sends it to a CSV file and get the results. I think this is awesome. This is one I discovered only like a month ago, and I've been using it on a regular basis since, right? Somebody calls and says they have problems. I don't need to go into Management Studio, find the query, and run it. I can just come in here, bring the diagnostic query up, and I can say, oh, what are my weights on this server? And I'm sorry that this is not bigger, but I can go, oh, look, I can run the top weights query, and I can select multiples. And when I click OK here, it's going to run, and it created the top weight CSV. Apparently, I only selected one. I didn't finish the selection of the second one, because if I had selected two, there would be multiple rows returned here. So then I can go back, and I can go to my output, and I don't have Excel on this VM, so you're going to have to just see the CSV in Notepad for now. I want to open in Notepad. There you go. But it just brings my preemptive OS domain service ops, right? That's my top weight based on his query. Obviously, if I had Excel, it'd be a lot easier to read and interpret. But now I've got that output, and again, I can run this against multiple servers. I can run multiples of the queries, and it's going to create a file per server per query. Yes.
It said it was including Glenn's scripts. What about version? What version is it downloaded?
That's a great question that I do. The question is, it includes Glenn's script, what version it is. I do not know. I believe it's the latest version.
You mean the version of Glenn Berry's script?
Yes.
The version of SQL Server.
What version of SQL Server is supported? Yes. Yes. It goes and checks.
Okay.
And,
This version,
yeah. So it has the different. So the question really is, what version of SQL? Because Glenn's scripts are different based on the version. It checks, and it has the scripts for each version and runs them. So that's a great question. But it's one of those things I figured I didn't need to know, because it's worked against every version I've run it against. So it must be doing it. So that's really cool, right? You've got two community projects now working together. I'm not saying they're necessarily collaborating, but because they're out there and they're open, they can take advantage of each other. I love that, right? That we have that power. And again, this is again one of my favorites now. It's quickly become one of my favorites for this. And I believe there's also you can run like who is active from here and all of that as well as a script, but that's not what I'm doing. So there's another new one. This one takes a few steps for me to do because of this. This is another one that I just recently, relatively recently learned of that I need to start using more often. How many people are restoring their backups on a regular basis to verify them? Oh, that's not too bad. That's not too bad. There's several people that raised it. More than, honestly, that was more hands up than I expected to see, right? So I'm glad with that. So the real command that's important here is verify the last backup. Test DBA last backup. You point it at the instance. Now, by default, the way I'm running it here, it restores the database on the same SQL instance. You can point it to another SQL instance as well. I'm not doing this here. And in the background, and I can't remember the exact naming convention, but it restores it with a different name. It handles that automatically, and I can't remember exactly what the name is. But when I do this, we'll see what the name is, the naming convention is. Actually, no, it drops it at the end, doesn't it?
Oh, it dropped it.
I believe it drops it at the end. Yeah.
So verify is a restore.
It does a full restore. That's why you read the documentation and you come to sessions like this so you learn. It's not doing a restore verify only, right? But it can, right? Like I said, I'm not showing you all of the things all of the parameters that you can pass to any of these. It can do a restore verify only. The way I'm running it, it's doing a full restore. Because restore verify only does not verify that you can actually restore that file. It says, oh, I can read the header, but I may not be actually able to do the restore, right? The only way to, because if you're using Ola Hallengren, which many of the people do, and you're using it with the defaults, he does a restore verify only after every backup. Those scripts do that. So I would not use this. So I will just run this whole thing. So I'm just creating a quick database name test. I'm doing a quick backup so I can do this. And the reason why it says take the initial full if it is required, because I just copied this from my AG stuff that I'm going to do, because this is another thing that we'll talk about when we get to that. So I'm just going to create a database, right? Here it is. And because I'm not, and again, if you can specify it in the create statement, new DBA database probably accepts it as a parameter. I'm just letting it take the defaults from model, because who wants to type that much? Even when you're setting up the demos ahead of time and copying and pasting, nobody wants to type that much. And then again, I'm just doing the backup, and I'm backing up here because I'm backing up to a shared folder, because when I show creating and doing the AG stuff, I need to have a shared folder for the backups that both sides can read. Right? And that's why I'm doing it. And there's a whole bunch of things. I like to initialize and format my backups when they're single backups and all that. So these are just the parameters that I'm using. So it's pretty good. Test DBA last backup. This will do a full restore and verify that. We'll see the output for that. So let's just run. I'm going to run them all at once instead of stepping through each one, so I don't have to do that. You just saw the backup. Here he goes. Scanning restore headers doing anything. Because again, it's such a small backup, it's not going to take long to do it, because it's just like an 8 meg database, right? So here's all the results from this. Here's the results of the creating the database, right? Here's the results of the backup. Yep, I backed up successfully. This is where I did it. This is the name. Here's the command that was actually run. It's I didn't specify compression. Compression should have compressed automatically, but because I think I have backup compression default on this instance. I'd have to check. And it just tells you it tells you it's a full backup, and it gives you lots of information about the backup, right? And here we go. Here's the database. Oh, the file exists. It succeeded, and it does by default, it does a DVCC check. And how long it took, how long the restore took, right? Very nice. Again, 8 meg database, not going to take long to do any of this. How long it took for the DBC check to run, and when the backup was taken, right? That certainly makes validating your backups much, much easier, right? I can put this in here and say this. Yeah, questions? Can you do this for RDS or Azure? I don't believe so. So are you talking, so the question is, can you do this for RDS or Azure? Do you mean Azure SQL Database? Yes. So Azure SQL Database, you don't have access to the backups to do this. I do know that. I've never worked with RDS, but I don't believe you can with RDS either, right? Oh yeah, so I have never worked with RDS, so I don't know that, but I've worked with Azure SQL Database, and you don't have access to the backup files. You have to use, Microsoft's Azure Commandlets or the portal to restore an Azure SQL database. So this will not work with this. A lot, I don't know how many of these because I haven't used these against Azure, but a lot of these are on-premise SQL Server commands. Some can be used against Azure SQL Database or, obviously when I say on-premise, that includes Azure VMs, Amazon VMs, Google VMs that have SQL Server on them, right? They work on anything that's a box install of SQL. I'm sure that there will be more support for Azure and services that where they can as it applies to doing DBA work up in the cloud, right, on platform as a service or software as a service. Any other questions? So again, I think this is pretty cool, right? I mean, I didn't have to tell it what backup file to use. I didn't have to tell it anything. I just had to say, this is the server, this is the backup I want it, this is the database I want to test the backup on. And, obviously, most of the time when I'm going to test my restores, I'm hoping that I have another server to do that test on, especially because, again, by default, it does the check DB, but there's a switch to turn that on and off and those types of things. So, but yeah, I want it to run that by default, especially if I'm going to another server, yes.
If you had a backup from last night and you ran this today, would it have just used the backup from last night?
So the question is, if you ran a backup from last night and you used it today, would it just use that back from? Yes, that's what it does. It goes out and, I haven't looked at the internals of it, but I can say that it's going out, looking at backup set, backup history, and saying what was the last backup of this database, and go out and get that and do the restore. Yes, back there.
Does it handle TDE? Do you have to stick it on the database you want to restore to the instance?
Okay, so he's asking, does it handle TDE? Because obviously, if you want to restore, you have to have the certificate of an encrypted database on the other server. I don't think this command handles TDE. I have not looked to see if it does. There are commands around TDE, commandlets in dbaTools to help you manage and do stuff with the certificates for TDE, but I have not specifically looked at that, so I don't know. My guess would be, my gut would say, no, it doesn't automatically handle that. Right? It's not a bad idea to add that as some parameters, maybe, to say, check it. Again, I'm not a PowerShell developer. I can't tell you how hard or easy that would be to do that. But again, if you have that situation, as Rob said earlier on one of the other questions, you can write logic to handle that for you. Is this database encrypted? Yes. Do I have the encryption key on my other database, on my other server? No. Get it and move it. Yeah, copy DBA certificate, yes. So you really don't even have to check. You can just say copy DBA certificate -force, and it will copy it and put it over there. Yes, right here.
You said it dropped the restored database once it's done the DBCC.
Yes.
If it's error, will it stop at the DBC failure? So if you do the check DB, will it stop before it stops? So you will verify what's going on.
Okay, so the question is, if the checkDB fails, will it stop and leave the database so you can evaluate it there? I saw Rob shaking his head no as you were asking the question, so the answer is no, it will not do that. But you do get the output, and it will tell you that the checkDB failed, so you could then manually do a restore and do your checks and find out what the problem is that way, right? So it is an option. Right? And again, I'm going to say this because lots of people make contributions to dbaTools. They do take feature requests and bug reports on GitHub. Don't hesitate to make those requests and put those things out there. right? And report bugs and all that kind of stuff. Do not hesitate to do that. And if you are a PowerShell person and you do, because there are few people raised their hand when I asked if they're PowerShell developers, don't hesitate again to fork it and add the feature yourself or fix the bug yourself, right? If you're a developer type and that wants to do that, do that. I mean, I actually do have a fork of dbaTools up on GitHub because I was doing some comparison, but I'm not a GitHub expert, so I got to figure out how to do all of that too, because I'm a DBA/developer. I do some development, but I'm not an expert on all of that stuff. Any other questions about this one? Yes. How well does it work with the SSIS-DB? The backup? Yes. It should work, I would assume. I have not tried it. So, how well does this work with SSIS-DB? I haven't tried it. It's something I'll put it on my list to try, right? Right? Write it down, right? Yeah, SSIS-DB is an interesting beast. How many people do SSIS development and have SSIS-DB in their environment, right? It's an ugly beast because all the CLR are in it and certificates and all that kind of stuff. So there's some things you have to do when you're restoring it and making sure everything works. I can tell you right now, I go to the documentation anytime I have to do it because I can't remember it. It's a beast. And so I do some SSIS. This is a side note. Please, if you're still doing file-based SSIS, please start using the catalog. Go get away from the file-based stuff. Put your stuff in the catalog so you get the automatic logging and you can query it much easier. It's so much better. I hate going into environments where it's file-based or even in MSDB. Get to the catalog. It's so much better. What? No, SSIS catalog is much better than the MSDB deployments for SSIS. Yeah. That's a side topic. We can talk about it afterwards if you want. We'll talk. All right. Oh, man. I have EditPad++ not on this particular VM, and I should have put it on here. So I'm not sure how this is going to format when I put it over here. So now we're getting to the one demo that I have a fear of failing with because sometimes I don't clean up correctly after a demo, after a session, and there are remnants of the AG sitting somewhere. So splatting, I'm like, what the heck is that? Because if I did this command, and I'll go over and pull it over, right? Nobody likes horizontal scrolling, right? Is there anybody here who is in favor of horizontal scrolling? I didn't think so, right? So there is a line continuation character, and I can't remember what it is, for PowerShell so you can wrap. Don't tell anybody. I've been instructed not to. Since I can't remember what it is, I'm not going to tell you. Anyway, because I can't. Somebody else would have to answer that question. But you can see these are the exact same commands, but I got to scroll 4 miles over with all of the parameters that I'm passing in, right? Which one do you want to read? You want to read this one. And it does the exact same thing. I don't know why I have the @ sign in there. Oh, I overwrote the params. Thank you. So, thank you. People were watching. You're not looking at me, you're looking at the screen. That's the right thing to do. It's better looking, too. So this will create an availability group. This command right here will do all of the steps that you need to step through in Management Studio to do it manually or run the SQL to do it. So you can tell I like my name. I already have the cluster built because, in reality, I'm not building the Windows failover cluster anyways. My infrastructure team is, hopefully. Maybe you are. Maybe you're one man or one woman band, and you have to do it all. I know that happens. Making it asynchronous, manual failover because those go together. Supplying the IP address for the listener. So when you supply the IP address in this particular command, creating the availability group, you do not have to supply this. This is optional. But when you do this, the listener name will be the same name as the availability group name. There is another command that you can run that is, add DBA. I actually have it in my demos. I'm not going to run it, but I have the command there, so I know what it is. So that's going to do, it's going to create this, and you can also specify, so I actually do have one database on there. This is the first time I've actually run this command with a database on the server, on the servers, because I've led with this several times. If I were to specify, and I'm not going to change the demo now, because I'm already afraid it's going to fail, but if you have databases, you can specify databases to add to the AG, and this command will also add the databases to the availability group as part of the create, so it'll walk through the whole process. So cross your fingers. This is, again, the only one that's ever failed on me, and hopefully it won't here. But again, splatting, get used to this. Use this if you're using PowerShell. Please make your scripts much more readable by doing this. So I do get some prompts here. Are you sure I want to do this? Yes, I do. So it's creating it. Do I want to add cluster permissions? Yep, I definitely want to. And remember, every permission, domain and SQL and everything like that to run that you need to have to create an availability group, you have to run this command, right? I can only run this and do this because I have domain admin, right? Because again, I'm going out and I'm writing stuff to Active Directory and DNS and all of that. Sorry. Go ahead.
Are the pop-ups coming from the DBA availability group commandlet? That's doing a permission check inside the commandlet?
Yeah, so the question is, are the pop-ups coming from the commandlet doing it's a permissions check, but it's not really doing a permissions check, it's just doing a confirmation. Are you sure you want to do this? You're making big changes here. Are you sure you want to make this change, right? Again, DBA paranoia. It's a good thing. I don't remember if there's a way to say not to do this, but to tell it not to do this, but confirm false. So you can do a dash. You can add a parameter confirm false, and it will not do this. But since I had never ran it that way, I didn't want to change and run it that way now. So you can watch me click a little bit, but it also gets you so you're not shocked if you get these, right? So this is adding the static IP for it. For the listener.
Saying no to any of those, it's already done a bunch of the work.
Yeah, now if I said no, yeah, it's already done a bunch of the work, it wouldn't make sense to say no, right? Why stop now? I'm already doing it. And you can notice I'm using automatic seeding mode on the AG. I'm setting that up. I like automatic seeding. There are some caveats with it. You got to watch for it. Large database. Sometimes you have a problem. There's a couple of trace flags that you can set up that will compress the stream for the automatic seeding that we've found have made it more reliable on larger databases. But it's actually, I don't have to specify the database. It's now adding the database. Like I said, this is the first time I've ran it with a user database on there. So I'm sure I can do an exclude database here, so it won't add them all. So that's bad, because I was going to add that database as with automatic seeding using the tools next. But that database already got added. So I'm done, right? My AG is set up. The database test, the test database that's there has been added. It's completely done. And it added it using automatic seeding because automatic seeding is set up, is the mode, right? So, I'm one of those guys. Did it really set it up? Is it really there? It says it is, but is it really there, right? So this is my secondary. Oh, look. There's my database, test synchronizing, so I don't even have to look. So that saves some time on the demos because normally I go in here and say, did it set up the availability group? Yep, there's the availability group. Oh, look, there's the replicas. It's all set up. I think that's pretty slick. Right? Yeah, exactly. Yes?
If it fails or whatever reason, is the code rerunable or
So the question is, if it fails for any reason, does it clean up, or do you have to go back and automatically and manually clean up? So when I've had it fail in my demos, it's failed right away because the availability group name was already in AD, so it didn't do anything. But yeah, you would have to go back in and manually clean up anything that it's already done, because you cannot rerun this commandlet to do the additional steps. So if it got through and it actually created the availability group, but it didn't add the listener, right? If the availability group got created, but the listener didn't get created, you can go in and say, okay, it's just the availability, the listener that didn't get created. I can run this commandlet. And I should have used splatting for this, but I haven't done it with this big a font because I've never had to have that big a font, and I've never been in a room this big. So I can so if it created the availability group, but it didn't create the listener for some reason, I can run add dbAG listener. And in this one, the reason why I show it, I can't run it because the AG already exists and has the listener. This one, you can actually specify the name for your listener if you want to do that, if you want to have a specific name for your listener. Yes, I saw your hand first right there, sir. Did you have a question?
When it created the endpoints, did it use a certificate or did it create endpoints that are based upon the service account?
So the question is, when it created the endpoints, did it use a certificate or did it use endpoints based on the service account? I don't actually know. Go and look. So here's the embarrassing part right now. I'm not the AG guy on my team. He is. So I don't even know where to look. I got to poke around. I'm going to guess it use the service account, because you would have to specify the certificate in order to get it to use a certificate. And like I said, I haven't looked at every command on there, but if you look at the parameters, I'm sure there's a parameter to create and add their certificate. So I saw your hand first, then I'll come here.
Can it handle more than 2 nodes and also multiple subnets? Can handle that?
The question is, and it's really true, can it handle multiple nodes and can it handle multiple subnets? I believe it can, yes. Because remember, behind the scenes, it's running SMO. It's doing the stuff that Management Studio is doing. So pretty much anything you can do in Management Studio, you have a commandlet or something you can do in DBA Tools that can do it as well. So these are great questions, right? And you can tell, like I said, I'm not the high availability guy on my team. We have two other guys that handle that stuff. I just think this is a cool commandlet that we can use that makes it awesome for automation. Yes?
I'm just wondering, so in the vein of something failing halfway through, on these big procedural commandlets, is there good enough documentation to know what smaller commandlets that you'd have to run after?
So the question is, in a big commandlet like add availability group that's creating a listener or copying databases over, is there good documentation that shows what's being called? So I think the documentation on DBA Tools is pretty good. I haven't looked to the extent to see what it's calling underneath the hood, but it really doesn't show that underneath the hood. But here's the great thing about PowerShell. I have the code. I have the code. I don't have to, I can go through and look and say, oh, that's what the code is doing. So, oh, it failed here, so I need to continue with these commandlets, because a lot of these are just it's just bundling, add AG database, add AG listener, add, it's calling all of those other commands underneath the covers, right? So you should just look at the code and find that and see what it's doing.
You can also do a what if with a verbose.
Oh, yes. Great idea. I did mention, so Rob just commented, I did mention what if earlier. You can do a dash what if with verbose, and it will tell you all the commands that it's running. So that will work. Yes?
I'm often struggling with read-only routing. Is that a part of this, or is that a different command?
So the question is, he struggles with read-only, and I'm going to pronounce it the way, routing. You know, different, there's no right or wrong pronunciation there. It's where you're from, right? You know, our Canadians friends say a boot, you know. No, we don't. I'm sorry if that offended any of our Canadian friends. Oh, I'm not going to repeat that comment. They're polite, that's fine, yeah. So I don't know because I haven't dealt with that, and I haven't used it, right? Yes, it is. Read-only routing is complicated, is a pain in the butt, and we actually currently have a client that's having a problem with it. So, you know, it is a pain. But again, one of the reasons why I don't know the answer is because I don't do a lot of dealing with the AG problems because we have other people on our team that do. I'm more of a performance tuning developer type, so doing this kind of stuff. But I really think, you know, this is a really, really great command that I think, and like I said, this is one of the first commandlets that I started using when I put together, well, not this one, sorry, because I'm not automatically creating availability groups, but I am automatically adding databases. So I'm going to skip one of the demos because it already added the database using automatic seeding, so I don't need to do that one. So this is the fun part, and this is the fun part. So to me, so this is something that I am. Whoops, I need to do Control A and then a Control B. So I'm going to add a database using add DBA AG database. I'm going to add a database, and this one I'm going to use manual seeding. I can tell it to do that. I can choose which one to do, and I'm telling it where the backups is and where to go get it. And this is the one that I am using. It's one of the first commandlets I use because I set up that quote automation for that client so that they could just drop a database name in a table and say add it to an availability group, and a SQL agent job runs it and adds it to the availability group, or adds it to log shipping using invoke DBA log shipping, right? So this is really one of my favorite commands because it's very powerful. It allows this type of automation. I love it. It's great. And one of the other things that I haven't mentioned yet about this, so the dbaTools team handles a lot of exceptions and gives you other messages coming out to tell you. It doesn't just send the exception out. And there is on, I think, almost every command, enable exception. So if you want to get an exception back so that you can handle it, if you're writing a complex script using dbaTools commandlets, you need to do enable exception so that then your script will get the error so that you can manually handle it. So that's an important thing to know as you start doing automation and you're adding logic around these commandlets, right? And that is documented at dbaTools.io in the documentation and in each of the commandlets. You can see what the parameters are, and they tell you what they are. I think that, you know, particularly for an open source community maintained project, it's got really good documentation, I think, and a lot of people talking about it. So I'm going to create a new database, and this is one of the things that, you know, kind of is a little bit of a tweak for me for this, so I need to put in a feature request for this. You still have to take the backup of the database. At least you did when I wrote these demos. You have to take the initial full backup. That would be the same if you were in Management Studio. It does. But, you know, so I have to take that because I'm saying use a backup, and it's going to actually take a backup when I do this, right? So I just think the commandlet should be able to say, oh, I don't have a backup, I'm going to take one anyways, who cares? There's my initial full backup. Yeah. It should know. So that's just you know, again, it's not a complaint, it's an enhancement, right? Because it works great. It works great. It's fantastic. Like I said, I've got a client, it's doing this automatically, and they're adding and removing databases from AGs on almost a daily basis using this through automation. So again, this will be very quick, but I want to just show that it will do the manual seeding as well for you. and you just need to supply the shared path, and it will do the backup. And there are commands you can tell it to use the last backup. There are parameters for that and all that. But if I got to do all of these take all of these backups and apply transaction logs and all that kind of stuff, why not just take a new full backup and be done with it, right? That's kind of my opinion. That doesn't mean it's the right opinion, but it is mine. Right? So we'll just run this, and it'll be quick because, again, we're creating like an 8 meg database. So you can see it just created the backup. Now it's doing the restore, and now it's trying to add it to the thing, and it is done. Again, small database, it's not going to take long. Obviously, as the database gets more realistic in size, you have to wait for the backup to complete. You have to wait for the restore to happen. There are things going on to do that. But again, you can see you get all the output here that, okay, I created the database. It hasn't taken any backups yet. I completed the backup. This is the path. I added it to the availability group, and it was added to this availability group. Here's the name. It's synchronized on what happens to be the primary JAX-SQL 01, and it's also on JAX-SQL 02 with a current state of initialization, right? So it's giving me all the information I need to know whether it succeeded or failed and any issues I had there. And again, confirmation that it's there, availability databases, there it is in my availability group. I can pull up the dashboard and say, okay, what's going on here? Okay, look, I've got the 2 databases, and now they're synchronizing. We're all good, right? So you can at least see the green there. I know that was small. I apologize for that. But that's just my manual verification step that it worked. So can you log in using the listener name? Yes. Yeah, I can. Yeah, it's an availability group. I can definitely. You want to see me do that? So we don't believe you. Prove it. Thank you very much. I like it. We don't believe you. We want visual verification that you can do that. It's the show me state. Very good. So honestly, the first time I gave this presentation, the first SQL Saturday I gave it, I said, I really should be using the agent. So here's the. I logged in using the listener name right there on the availability group. I didn't log in there. I used JAX-SQL 01. I tried to fool you. Then I realized, that's actually just saying what availability group do that. I haven't.
Does it even exist, Jack?
So I will take the initial backup. I will take a backup using the listener name, JAX-SQL AG. And if this fails, I'll be really embarrassed. I love the question, though. I love it. Don't believe me. Make me prove it. There you go. I just took a backup using the listener name. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So Seinfeld fans, right? Okay, that's it. I'm done. Leave on a high note. So it's fantastic. So we're down to about 7 minutes now. So just a couple of things. So we talked about syncing jobs and syncing, right? That's something you have to do on availability groups, right? You have to have your login synced. You have to have your jobs syncing and all that. So I've got SQL scripts that I won't go. These are just creating jobs. So this first one is to copy the jobs and the logins over, right? It's just a job that's going to run a PowerShell script that I'm going to do, and I'm going to create the job. I'm going to execute this and just create this job and make sure I'm on. I'm actually on the wrong box. I don't want to be on that box, so I do have to change my connection here. And yes, I could have created these jobs using dbaTools, but I created them and scripted them out because that's a little faster than there's a lot less typing involved for this. So I'm going to execute this, making sure, and I didn't use the listener name. I just connected directly. So I created a job on and I could have created it on either node, right? I mean, it doesn't have to, but for demonstration purposes, I'm creating it here. So now I have my copy jobs and logs to other node job. And oh boy, I tried to change every font I could find in Management Studio. and it won't do it. So actually, I'm not going to show you it in this. I'm actually going to show you in the script because you'll actually be able to see it. So I'm just creating the job, and here's the job step. And I've done a lot of reading about this and all this. The general recommendation is use a command exec job and call PowerShell exe and then call a script. Don't use a PowerShell command job step because you don't know what shell you're using. And I can't remember the name, and I think it's in the slide deck. I should have it somewhere. But somebody wrote a great blog post about it and did all this comparison, and depending on what version you're on, this is what you get, this is what you... So it might not work if you use the PowerShell command step. dbaTools.io/agent, right? But this is the recommended way to do it, right? Create a script, call PowerShell exe, call the script, right? Not anything super fancy there. So let's go to here. So this is not necessarily a production-ready script. This is a demo script saying, hey, you can do this. It's not necessarily the right way to do it, not necessarily the best way to do it. But all I'm doing is I'm saying, I'm getting the primary using dbaTools, DBA AG replica. I'm getting the replicas there, piping it to where the role is primary, and I'm just getting the name. And I'm saying, if I'm on the primary, and here I'm handling multiple nodes, I'm checking for each replica in my get DB, and there's probably, again, I'm not a PowerShell developer, so there's probably a better way to do some of this in PowerShell, but it works. You have a to-do to blog this. Rob has a to-do to blog this, so be watching. I will have to poke Rob. I'll do that right after the session. I'll go down and poke him. And maybe we'll get a little hee-hee-hee like the Pillsbury Doughboy. So I'm just checking so give me all of the instances where I'm not the primary, loop over them, copy the jobs from the primary to the replica, disable on destination. I'm excluding the sys policy purge history job because that's on every SQL server anyways. And the reason why I'm specifically excluding it is because I'm specifically saying force, because I want to make sure that I'm getting, if I made any changes to jobs, I'm dropping and recreating the job. Right? That's why I'm doing that way. And then the next command, copy DBA login, very similar, same kind of thing. And because I'm getting the output here, I'm using format table with auto size, and I know I have write output. This script is probably screwed up at some. Oh, I have write output because I want the output to go to the file that I'm creating with the SQL agent job. That's why I'm doing that. And I have that commented out here for some reason. Doesn't really matter for this. But this is the script that's going to be run by that agent job when it runs.
The last parameter then, is that you disable the job?
Disable on destination?
Okay, but the last one, at the end of the line.
Enable exception?
Enable exception, what's that?
So that is, we talked about earlier, so by default, they don't pass exceptions to your code. They send up warnings saying what the problem was instead of sending you an exception. So you don't necessarily get a failure. If you want to get a failure and handle the error yourself, you need to enable exception on these so the exception gets bubbled up to you so you can handle it yourself in your try-catch, right? I don't have a try-catch here, so I really don't need to have this on here, but I was actually having a problem with this demo when the first time I did it, so I did enable exception to try to find out what it was. And it was a permissions issue because I screwed up permissions, right? Yes, in the back. So he's asking about the exclusion statement. Is there an option for a wildcard there? There is not. You have to actually put the job name in. Yeah, there is not. There is not. Now you could do some of your own. You could do your own thing, and instead of doing copy DB agent job, you could do a get DB agent job, and then do a where not equal to or not like, and then pipe that to copy DBA agent job. So there's always a way around it, right? So this will work. We're actually at 11:59, so I'm not going to run this. I do want to show you just the other script, and these scripts are included in the file on the PASS website. So this is if you wanted to have a job that automatically added new databases to your availability group. This script will do this. This is not the script that I'm using in production because I'm doing much more than that. But this basically says, hey, if I'm running and there's been a new database added since the last time I ran and it's not in the AG, take a backup, put it in the AG. Yes?
No, actually, do you have a workaround to restore the SQL 17 database to the 14 bar?
So the question is, do you have a workaround to restore from a higher version to a lower version of SQL? So I don't know that there is a commandlet to do that because essentially I don't know that you would have to actually just script out the database, create the database, and then copy all the data over because you can't read the backup file, right? You would have to know the backup file formats and be able to change the bits on disk to make that work. All right, so I'm jumping out of the VM now, and because I've got to go through the last couple of slides, right, that are there. I really don't have any more slides, so let's just do, let's see, where is it? Just screw it. Does it start from that slide, or did it start from the beginning? I only have 13 slides, so it's not like I have to scroll through a whole lot, right? Again, session evaluations, please take the time to do those. Here's my contact information. If you say, I saw your session at Past Summit, and you send me an email, I will reply to you. And if I don't know the answer, I will try to find the answer to your question for you, right? I'm not gonna do that. But you can go on, on Twitter, SQL Help, and dbaTools, all those guys are on there. So thank you very much for coming, and I hope you can go back and are excited to use this.